Hey guys, what's up? Liru, the Lance Corporal here, and we are continuing off from episode 1 of our Zeus tutorial. In that episode, I showed off how to make a Zeus mission and how to set yourself up as a Zeus, which is very important for doing this. So, in this episode, we will focus on the vanilla Zeus interface. So just going over it quickly, first on our left we have our Edit tab, and this is useful for just getting an overview of everything you've placed down. If you notice, I'll put a vehicle down. We have the vehicle, any people that are in the vehicle, so with Armored, for example, you'll have a driver, you'll have a gunner, and then you'll have a commander. Some of these more simplistic four-wheeled vehicles or more open vehicles usually only have a driver. And then also any movement orders you give it, anything you have it do, it'll do that for you. Even engaged targets will appear in this menu. I'm going to be honest, I don't use it most of the time. I prefer just the extra space to see stuff, make cinematics, etc. But it's honestly up to the Zeus. Now we have our little Zeus symbol, we have a compass, we have the uptime of the server, we have the time of the server itself, and then we have the tab you will be using for about 95% of your Zeusing, which is your create tab. So quickly going over the tabs, we have units, groups, modules, markers, and recent. So very quickly, units, all of your individual units in a single fashion. So, you know, if I wanted an ammo bearer, or if I wanted a turret, this is where I go, or if I want any custom buildings. Anything you see as a texture that is a building or structure that isn't part of like the map nature itself, you can spawn through this interface. There are a few limitations, such as a few buildings or items that you can't get in Zeus that you could get in Eden Editor. But overall, I'd say about 95% of the stuff that you see, you can spawn in the editor. So for example, if I wanted to add like a military tower here, I could just, there's quite a lot of tabs to go through, but a lot of the stuff you might be using is in military within the structures tab. You would find a cargo tower, place it, and then, this is like a little addition to the base we made here in the first episode. People can climb in it, get recon data from all over the place, or these are obviously, defensive structures, so I'd probably put this in the enemy AO, and from there, put units on it, and then have people attack that area. So moving on, just going to delete that. Any sort of item you can find in these tabs, including empty vehicles, if you look in the proper tabs. And just to recap, individual units and vehicles. Groups, a little more complicated, more so you just have groups of units that you can put together as well as any advanced compositions. This is just vanilla, so what you'll see in here is, for example, guerrilla camps. I use these from time to time. They're nice, they're cute, they add a little bit of detail, but you can always play around with these or take parts from them. Like, for example, if I bring up Bear again, I love taking these sandbags, just copying them and, pasting a bunch, because sandbags are probably one of your staples for Zeus operations. So we have a bit of that. Mods such as Ares and Achilles add heavily to this list. But also in terms of infantry, fire teams, rifle squad, etc., as well as you can get a few vehicle teams. However, I would highly recommend, in the next video I talk about, we spawn in vehicles with infantry a different way so you can set them up at a more easier fashion compared to just using what's already given to you in this interface. Modules. Now, this is also very important. Some of these tabs are clearly more useful than others, so we're just going to go down the list. Animals, if you want to have that nice little touch of goats in your op, or sheep. Go ahead, go crazy. I mean, there's 5 options here. With mods, you can get even more. Just a little note, these guys will start free roaming, and within 10 minutes, they will be out of the stadium walking out and about. So spawn them in as one of the last things you do, because they get a little antsy. Audio, if you want to play any custom music that is in the game, you'll get a nice little preview. You can set to who gets it. Plenty of different songs. You'll hear a little preview from it, and then hit OK, and then it'll play. Radio message, once in a while, I do like to play this.
Be advised, the enemy is bombarding your position.
And that's one of my little warnings I give them before I mortar the hell out of them. But there's plenty of other sound bites you can play. You can set to who receives it. And then this play sound just plays a looped sound. Again, really like using it, especially this setting. So if you notice, it does an AoE, closer you are, easier it is. So if the enemies get alerted, I like to play that. So next one, chem lights. Different colored chem lights, better for night ops if you want to highlight something like an objective or whatever. Chem lights are very good at getting players' attention. Effects. IR grenade works, however, if you delete it, these only work at night. If you delete it, it will still be present. Just a little bit of a warning. Tracers is a bit bugged right now. Normally it would make random tracers fly around in this position. They're good at making players be wary, but I would wait for the Achilles mod because there's a little feature in there called suppressive fire that does a much better job. Environment, very simple. Post-process, this is just like an end result here. I don't really use it. Skip time, if you want to make it night or day, easily in between ops. Depends on what the op is, what you want to do. Time acceleration, extends time. You can set to whatever the heck you want. And then weather. Ares and Achilles expand on this heavily, but you can change the level of fog, make it overcast, hit OK, and boom, there it is. But with Ares and Achilles, the change isn't that instant. It's a lot more subtle, and we'll get into that when we get to those episodes. Fire support, the fun stuff. Now, again, Ares and Achilles does a better job, but if you want to get their asses moving, nothing gets a player base moving than doing this. That sound is all they need. Give it a few seconds. Boom. Clearly, the bigger the number, the bigger the explosion. I'll do a little comparison here. Mortar, artillery, rocket. There's your first explosion. There's the howitzer explosion. And there's the 230 explosion. So that red circle indicates an absolute kill zone within the 155 and 230. And then the mortar, it's random. Really just depends on their position if they're behind hardcover. These are a bit fun to play with. It really depends on, give an example, whichever factions players are on, that'll give you the option. So I actually tend to stay away from these unless I have Ares or Achilles to switch my own faction, in which case I'll go to the enemy faction temporarily, and then I'll be able to use the proper gun runs for that faction. Once in a while, I do give them this support where if they throw a red smoke grenade, I'll do a gun run on it for them. But again, depends on what you want the odds to be. Flares, very simple. It pops frickin' flares, and they are very hard to see in the daytime, but you heard the soundbite. Objectives, probably the most important tab in all of this. 90% of the time, you're going to be using the custom objective tab. Click it down. Set the faction. You can set it individually or for players. Again, 90% of the time, you're just going to set it to the faction. Give it a title. Give it a description. Quick little command. If you ever want to make a break to list out objectives like number 1, number 2, you're going to want to type this in. That is a little script command that puts a break in the text. If you don't do that, I'll give an example. Click on it, see, waffles, pancakes, French toast, very simple. Now if I go back, even though they're on their separate lines, if I do back, and there you go. I put a space on pancakes to show you gotta Make sure you don't add any additional spaces or else the lining might be off, but that's how you get them to be in their individual lines. Other objectives, very simple, attack and defend. These only really work with PvP or if you're doing races, which is why I don't like to touch it too much. And then stuff like get in vehicle. I mean, if you are unable to designate which vehicle, if you have to use this to tell people which vehicle to get into, then yeah, you might need to have them fix their frickin' ears. Respawns, if you ever want to put an FOB, you can use a player respawn, or if you're halfway through a mission and you change a player's faction over and you need to drop a respawn point for them, this is how you do it. So let's say they're doing the mission, Kavala, and they get a respawn point like right here. Boom, new respawn point. They'll get a notice as well from here and possibly the base, and you'll just keep pressing on. If you're doing a very large scale mission where they're hitting multiple points, making these and having them be FOBs and everything is very crucial to having them keep the momentum going for the op. You never want that to stop dead. Next tab over, scenario flow. Your briefing, countdown, end scenario, respawn ticket, scenario name. Don't really touch this stuff. You can set a lot of this stuff in Eden Editor. You don't really need to set for Zeus. The only thing I sometimes do is this, which ends the scenario. I'll show off what that is in the end. Smoke shell is very simple. It makes smoke. I mean, that one isn't rocket science, but just in case you didn't know. Training, this is always fun. Boot camp stage, don't worry about that. Hint, if you need to drop a message, select the faction it's for. They're all highlighted by default. Then just hit OK, and it'll appear in the top right for everyone whose faction is selected. Other than that, this is also where you get all your information for Zeus, mods, a lot of just how-to things. So this is always a good thing to look at. But honestly, trial and error, in my opinion, is the best thing you could do. And then if you ever have a troublesome player, just click on this punishment, click on them, and then pick a nice little animation for them to do. Very useful for if someone starts doing a bunch of team killing, either on an op or a public server, and you're waiting for an admin to ban them if you don't know how. And it's quite entertaining to watch. And then Zeus, your three very nice things. I will show them off real quick on this random FIA Rifleman. Auto Rifleman, my apologies. Arsenal. Click on it, let it load. It's the same as the virtual arsenal. You can set whatever you want for them. And when you're done, you just say close. You can save it. You can load whatever you want. Close. And then boom. It's able to use. Remote control, very simple. You become him. Now, there is one thing I want to point out that I've been pointing out to people that play. Listen to this sound. Listen to the wind. It's very subtle. You might have to play it back a few times, but you can tell when a Zeus remote controls when you hear that shift in wind, and everyone can hear it no matter their faction, whether they are dead or alive. That is what has saved me from Luton 09 a few times, because I know he gets on my ass. And then the favorite one to do to Kyle Clemens. Headphone warning. But it usually insta-kills. It misses about 8% of the time, but you can always spam it. Also, it's lethal 100% against buildings and any destroyable objects. Very nice to show if you're angry. Markers, very simple. Only you can delete these markers or set them. Players can't edit them. Also, if you leave and rejoin the server, then no one can edit them. So if you memory leak, use these markers with caution. If you have to reuse the server, don't use them. Otherwise, free game. Just follow what they mean. Some look cool, some look fancy. If they're doing, if they don't know what they're doing in Kavala, I would just do this and give them a mission file. You can then double click on it, give it a name, give it a color. So if they don't know what I don't know what they're going to be doing yet, like I'm setting something up. If I want to do a specific objective, like at the castle, for example, probably do something a little more specific, like a warning, or, the objective. Again, all up to Zeus's preference. I'm not going to teach how to be imaginative. That's literally your time to shine and have all this experience. And then recent, you can put anything down that you've recently put. However, there are some hotkeys, which I will talk about in the next episode, that are much easier to use in this tab. So again, I don't touch it. But other than that, that is literally everything. So if you have any questions on stuff I haven't covered, please ask in the comments section or check the next episode, because that episode we're going to get into hotkeys, tips and tricks, and everything purely with the vanilla interface. So from there, thank you guys for watching this episode, and I will see you next time.